At the start of the draft process, it seemed like Shedeur Sanders was a sure thing to be a top 3 pick. You know, the Cleveland Browns, with the disaster that was the Deshaun Watson trade, giving him 230 fully guaranteed, him getting injured once again. You felt like Shedeur was going to be the replacement for him, since when you get a rookie quarterback on a cheap deal, it's an easy way to bounce back from a terrible situation like that. But now it's coming out that the Browns are leaning towards drafting Travis Hunter with the second overall pick, which means that third overall for the New York Giants, it comes down to Abdul Carter or Shedeur Sanders. With them getting Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, though, it seems unlikely that they're going to draft Shedeur, because then you'll have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. Don't forget, they re-signed Tommy DeVito. So you got him, you got Russ, and you got Jameis. Adding Shedeur just doesn't seem likely for the Giants. And plus, when you have a general manager and a head coach that are on the hot seat, they're trying to save their jobs, you wonder how much trust they have in a guy like a Shedeur Sanders, who isn't seen as a generational quarterback talent. Do they believe that Shedeur could start week 1 right away and give them the best chance to save their jobs? I don't think so. If you are the New York Giants, you're probably better off going with a proven veteran, considering your circumstances with your GM and your head coach being on the hot seat. So if Shedeur doesn't go in the top 3, we could see him fall all the way to 21 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I got my fingers crossed as a Steeler fan that Pittsburgh ends up selecting Shedeur Sanders. I know some of y'all may call it wishful thinking, but a brother can dream. Can I? Shedeur is everything that you look for as far as a franchise quarterback. He's accurate, takes good care of the football. I think he's a great leader. His teammates love him at Colorado. And the narrative that the media has about Shedeur Sanders is way different from how his teammates talk about him. Every time the game was on the line, his teammates always believed they had a chance to win because of two at quarterback. And if the Giants and the Browns end up passing on Shedeur for Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, I don't see anything wrong with that. It's just that you could be passing up on what will be eventually one of the best quarterbacks in the game. I have a hard time picturing the son of Deion Sanders being a bust. Just with the genes, I don't see it. Shedeur has been groomed and he's been raised for this moment all his entire life. There is not a single prospect in this draft who is better suited to handle the spotlight than Shedeur Sanders. And he's not the flashiest quarterback in the world. He's been compared to guys like Andy Dalton, which I don't think is a bad comp. Andy Dalton had a really good career. If you could get Andy Dalton out of Shedeur Sanders, you're getting a damn good quarterback. Like, Andy Dalton was taking the Cincinnati Bengals to the playoffs like nearly every single season for the first couple of years of his career in the AFC North, with Big Ben at his peak, with the Baltimore Ravens still being really good. But I feel Shedeur Sanders is going to end up being a lot better than Andy Dalton. I feel he does a really good job of throwing guys open. Just with the Steelers quarterback situation right now, you don't know if you're going to be able to get Aaron Rodgers or not. And even if you do, you still have to have a plan for the future. That's been the Steelers' problem. They've never had the opportunity to get one of the best quarterbacks in the draft outside of drafting Kenny Pickett, who had no business being the first-round pick at all. Shedeur Sanders is a lot different, though. And him with Mike Tomlin will be the perfect fit. He gets to sit for a year behind a head coach who I'm pretty sure Deion would love for him to play with. Mike Tomlin's a really good motivator. He's a player's coach. And plus, with the popularity that he already has, when Shedeur gets drafted, he automatically is going to be one of the most popular players in the league. His jersey's going to sell like crazy. Everybody's going to be talking about him. The Steelers with Mike Tomlin have been accustomed to handling guys that have big personalities. Antonio Brown, Big Ben, George Pickens. Shedeur would be no different. If Mike Tomlin can get a Hall of Fame career out of Antonio Brown, he can get a Hall of Fame career out of Shedeur Sanders. That's how good I feel Shedeur Sanders would be if he gets drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And there's a great chance that he ends up falling in the draft to Pittsburgh, because outside of the Browns and the Giants, the Jets, they just signed Justin Fields. How likely are they to double dip at quarterback? The New Orleans Saints, what are they going to do ninth overall? Could they get their quarterback of the future and take Shedeur Sanders, or could they take best player available? I really believe that there is a true path to the Pittsburgh Steelers landing Shedeur Sanders in this year's draft, and I'm hoping that it happens. I love every time I wake up and I see more news that scouts are taking Shedeur Sanders off their boards. You're getting a little bit turned off by him, because I'm like, perfect. Keep sleeping on him so he can be the perfect draft day steal for the Steelers. I wanted Pittsburgh to draft Lamar Jackson back in 2018, and my heart was broken when we passed on him for Terrell Edmonds. And then the Ravens traded back into the first round to draft Lamar. Now I got to see him 2 times a year destroying the Pittsburgh Steelers. Shedeur would finally give the Steelers a chance to be a Super Bowl contender as long as he's able to reach his potential within his second, third year in the league, which, if Shedeur Sanders puts it all together, he's the black version of Joe Burrow. That's what his game looks like when you watch him. That's how prolific he was when he was playing at Colorado. He changed that entire program. Before he got there, Colorado was irrelevant. They haven't been good since the 90s. Then Deion arrives to Boulder with his Louis luggage, which Travis and Shedeur were part of that, and they became one of the best stories in college football. And the main reason why folks hate Shedeur is because of who his pops is. But if you can separate the hate that you have for Deion and just evaluate Shedeur as the player, he's a really good quarterback. He's not, somebody that's going to light your own world with crazy physical attributes. He's not the athlete that a guy like Anthony Richardson is. And despite being Deion's son and sharing his genes, you would expect a little bit more out of him from the athletic department. But he's a functional starting quarterback. And that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers need. And you got somebody that has aura. You got somebody that has a little bit of moxie to him. You got somebody that's going to have the ability to get his teammates rallying behind him. I'm having my fingers crossed that the Steelers are able to walk away from this drive with Shedeur Sanders and not Jackson Dart. If they take Jackson Dart, that's going to be the final nail in the coffin for Mike Tomlin as the head coach of Pittsburgh. Jackson Dart is simply not it. Shedeur's just a way better quarterback in terms of accuracy, decision-making. Every time the game was on the line and Shedeur had to come through for Colorado, he came through the majority of times. But I can recall several instances when Jackson Dart choked away a game for Ole Miss, such as late in the season when they lost on the road against Florida. He was awful in that game, especially in the fourth quarter. Shedeur would be the perfect quarterback for the Steelers to draft, to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a year, and then eventually take over the mantle on a team that, by that point, when we get into 2026, should be in Super Bowl contention. They've invested a lot of draft capital into improving the offensive line. You got a really good wide receiving core if you're able to extend George Pickens to a long-term contract. And Mike Tomlin, with a guy like a Shedeur Sanders, finally will give him good enough quarterback play to compete with the other top teams in the AFC, because this is the conference that's home to the majority of the NFL's best quarterbacks, and you're not going to be able to make a deep playoff run if you don't have good quarterback play. The Steelers could finally get that out of Shedeur Sanders. So I hope that he falls in the draft and the Steelers are able to walk away with their franchise quarterback. They haven't had one since Big Ben hung it up. They haven't had a plan at this position, and they still don't have one. But Shedeur Sanders could finally solve the biggest issue that the Steelers have been struggling to fix